The dangerous cycle of caring what others think, stop it now. Imagine for a second that you're born with a voice pure, unfiltered, completely your own. It's not a literal voice, but a sense of who you are, what you value, what you love, what you fear. You begin your life with this internal compass, this deep-rooted instinct guiding you toward truth and authenticity. But then something happens. You start getting feedback. Not just information, but judgment, approval, disapproval, praise, criticism. It starts subtly, a look from a parent, a teacher's comment, a laugh from the other kids on the playground, and little by little, your attention shifts. You stop listening to your voice, and you start watching their faces. You begin to care what others think. At first, it feels like a survival skill. And in a way it is. We are social creatures. Acceptance meant safety. Rejection once meant death. But evolution never prepared us for the modern world, where millions of opinions are just a scroll away, where likes and comments become metrics of worth, where comparison is constant and curated perfection is the norm. Caring what others think no longer keeps us alive, it quietly kills us. Not physically, but spiritually, gently, slowly. We don't just listen to others, we build our identity through their eyes. We become mirrors for the expectations of the crowd. And here's the philosophical tragedy. The more we shape ourselves to be loved, the less we recognize the person in the mirror. We trade authenticity for approval, but we never feel whole. Because approval is addictive, and like any addiction, it never satisfies. You get one hitter compliment, a like, a retweet, and you want another. But then criticism comes, silence comes, and you spiral. You question yourself, but you shrink, you perform, you hide. Let's pause here and ask a hard question. Who are you when no one is watching? Can you answer that without referencing how others perceive you, but without thinking about your image, your status, your role? If the answer is no, don't be alarmed. That's the state most of us live in. And that's why anxiety, depression, and burnout are skyrocketing, not just because life is hard, but because we are constantly trying to be someone we're not. That internal tension, that dissonance between who we are and who we pretend to be, it doesn't just go away. It festers. It turns into self-doubt, into paralysis, into mental illness. We need to understand a profound truth. Caring what others think is not merely a bad habit. It's a philosophical misalignment. It's a betrayal of the self. The 19th century philosopher Soren Kierkegaard warned that the crowd is untruth. He meant that truth cannot be found in the collective opinion of others. Truth is individual, subjective, personal. And once we give the crowd power over our truth, we give them power over our sanity. You cannot be mentally free while being emotionally enslaved to external validation. But we don't just care what others think because we're weak. We do it because we're afraid. Afraid of being rejected, afraid of being alone, afraid of being misunderstood. But here's the paradox. The more we try to avoid those fears by conforming, the more isolated we feel. Because the acceptance we receive is conditional. It's not based on who we are, but who we pretend to be. And deep down, we know it. That's why it doesn't heal us. That's why we stay anxious, even when we're liked. That's why we feel lonely, even in a crowd.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights
So what's the way out? It starts with radical self-inquiry. You have to ask, what parts of me exist only to please others? What decisions have I made out of fear rather than desire? Who would I be if I stopped trying to be impressive and started trying to be real? Notice how hard those questions are to answer. That's the cost of building your life on perception rather than principle. But it's also the key to liberation. You see, the goal isn't to stop caring entirely. That's not human. The goal is to care wisely, to choose whose opinions matter and why, and to listen without losing yourself, to receive feedback without erasing your voice. Most importantly, to remember that the only person who lives with the consequences of your choices is you, not the audience, not the critics. You. Let's go deeper. If your deepest fear is being judged, then who is your real master? And if your freedom depends on others liking you, is it freedom at all? The phantom judge, how the mind invents an audience and chains you to it. You don't need a room full of people to feel watched. You don't need actual critics to feel judged. That's the terrifying brilliance of the human mind. It builds an audience out of shadows. A phantom judge, a tribunal of imagined voices, always present, always alert. And we live under its gaze. Every decision, every word, every silence, we filter it through the question, what will they think? But here's the paradox. Often, they don't even exist. Or if they do, they're not thinking about us. Yet we shape our lives as if their imagined opinion is the ultimate truth. This is one of the most dangerous psychological traps we fall into. It's not just external validation we chase, it's internalized surveillance. We become both prisoner and warden, actor and critic. We censor ourselves before anyone else has the chance to. We rehearse conversations in our heads, we modify our passions, we even shrink our dreams, not because someone told us to, but because the phantom judge might disapprove. And that judge is ruthless. It doesn't applaud. It doesn't encourage. It only whispers, don't. Don't stand out. Don't be weird. Don't fail. Don't be too much. Think about how many moments in your life were dictated by this invisible audience. How many times did you hold back an idea? How many times did you wear something you didn't like, say something you didn't mean, or stay silent when your soul wanted to scream? Now ask yourself, who are you trying to impress? Can you even name them? Or was it just the blurred outline of people, of them, of society? That's the illusion. We think we're living for others, but often we're living for a fiction our minds have created. This phantom judge is born early. It's the internal echo of the first criticisms we received. The mocking laugh on the playground, the disapproving frown from a parent, the subtle but sharp rejection from someone we admired. Our minds, desperate to avoid that pain again, construct a model of the world where judgment is constant and dangerous. And we reinforce it every time we conform. Every time we betray ourselves to avoid imagined disapproval, we feed the judge. We give it more power, more precision. It becomes more real. But here's the truth we forget. Perception is not reality. And judgment is not absolute. What one person mocks, another might admire. What one group shames, another celebrates. The standards you're contorting yourself to meet are not universal, they're arbitrary, cultural, temporal. They change with time, with place, with perspective. So ask yourself, why am I sacrificing my authenticity for something so unstable? Why am I giving up peace for approval from people I may never meet, or worse, people I don't even respect? The philosopher Epictetus once said, "If you want to be free, don't wish for things to happen as you wish, but wish for them to happen as they do." But I'd add this: if you want to be free, stop wishing to be seen a certain way. Start wishing to be who you are, regardless of how it looks. Because the moment you stop performing for the phantom judge, something remarkable happens. You begin to hear your own voice again. Not the voice that's been trained to please, but the raw, honest, unpolished voice that speaks from your core. That's the voice of your values. That's the voice of your purpose. And it's been drowned out by applause and criticism for far too long. Let's go even deeper. What if the phantom judge isn't just wrong, it's irrelevant? What if the great lie isn't that people are watching, but that their watching matters more than your becoming? What if the ultimate betrayal isn't being criticized, but never being known because you were too afraid to be seen at all? And yet, the fear remains. Because stepping out from under the gaze of the phantom judge means risking rejection. It means facing the very discomfort we've spent our lives avoiding. But here's the twist: rejection is not death. It's revelation. It reveals who values the real you. It filters out the noise. It creates space for the kind of connection that can only grow in truth, not performance. So I'll ask you a question that could change your life. If you stopped caring what others think, really stopped, what would you do differently tomorrow? How would you walk, speak, create, love? That's not a theoretical question. That's a doorway, and only you can walk through it. The mask of sanity, how authenticity heals the mind and rebuilds the soul. We wear the mask so well that we forget it's even there. It becomes second nature, this crafted version of ourselves that speaks the right words, projects the right image, feels the right level of emotion, never too much, then never too little. And we call that sanity. We call that fitting in. But it's not sanity. It's survival. It's the quiet death of authenticity beneath layers of social performance. And over time, that mask begins to crack, not on the outside, but on the inside. The more we pretend, the more we lose touch with the self we're pretending to protect. Until one day we look in the mirror and see nothing but performance. Mental illness, in many forms, is not always about chemical imbalance or trauma. Often, it's about this slow, subtle erosion of alignment between who we are and who we feel we're allowed to be. It's the exhaustion of constantly managing perception. It's the anxiety of being seen and the depression of never being known. We keep the mask glued to our face in hopes that others will love us for it, but the love we receive never reaches beneath the surface. So we feel hollow, not because we're unlovable, but because we're unseen. Authenticity is not a luxury, it's a necessity for psychological survival. When you are not allowed to be yourself, or worse, when you are the one disallowing it, the mind begins to fragment. It splits into the person you are, the person you show, and the person you think others want. Each layer adds friction, confusion, dissonance. That's when you start feeling like a stranger to yourself. That's when you begin to spiral, not because life is unbearable, but because you've lost the compass that once pointed you toward peace. But authenticity is not just about expression, it's about integration. It means aligning your behavior with your beliefs, your choices with your values, your words with your inner truth. It's not about being loud or rebellious, it's about being real. It's about reclaiming the ground you gave away when you decided approval mattered more than integrity. You can't heal in a lie. You can't grow in a costume. Healing begins the moment you stop performing and start telling the truth, especially to yourself. This is where the work gets hard, because authenticity demands risk. It demands that we stop saying what's expected and start saying what's real. It demands that we disappoint people, but that we lose the admiration of those who only like the mask. That we let go of the illusion that we can be accepted by everyone if we just try hard enough. But here's the thing, when you drop the mask, you don't lose love, you find it. Because the love that remains is real. It's not for the version of you shaped by fear. It's for the you that exists when no one's watching. Authenticity doesn't solve everything, but it makes healing possible. It's the foundation. Because when you're authentic, and someone still accepts you, it rewires something deep inside. It tells your nervous system you're safe. Not because you're perfect, but because you're whole. And when you're safe, your mind can rest. Your soul can breathe. Your creativity can flourish. Your relationships can deepen. That's what real sanity looks like, not conformity, but coherence. So ask yourself this: what part of me have I hidden for so long that I've started to believe it's gone? And what if that part holds the key to my peace? The final freedom, living without permission in a world obsessed with approval. There is a kind of freedom so rare, so threatening to the world we live in, that most people will never touch it. Not because it's hidden, but because it's feared. It's the freedom of not needing permission to exist as you are. In a society fueled by validation, likes, applause, and curated identity, this freedom is revolutionary. Because it says, I don't need you to understand me. I don't need you to agree with me. I don't even need you to like me. I just need to be true. And in that truth, there is peace. Not comfort, not ease, but peace, the kind that comes from knowing that you no longer owe the world a version of yourself that fits its expectations. We're taught from a young age to wait for permission. Permission to speak, to dream, to take risks, to be bold, to be different. We're taught that we must earn our place in the world by being palatable, agreeable, safe. So we shrink. We apologize for our existence without even realizing it. We soften our edges, dilute our vision, and call it maturity. But true growth is not about becoming more acceptable, it's about becoming more real. And that kind of growth is terrifying to the systems built on conformity. Living without permission doesn't mean rejecting others. It means no longer rejecting yourself. It means giving yourself the authority to act, to move, to create, without waiting to be chosen. It means recognizing that you are already worthy, not because of what you've done, but because you are. And once you internalize that, once you stop outsourcing your self-worth to the crowd, you begin to walk differently. You begin to speak from a deeper place. You begin to live, not just survive, not just perform, but actually live. This, of course, comes with consequences. People will misunderstand you. They will project their insecurities onto your freedom. They will try to pull you back into the boxes you've outgrown. But that's not your burden. Your responsibility is not to be understood, it's to be whole. And wholeness requires boundaries. It requires saying no. It requires walking away from people, places, and systems that only loved the mask and never the soul behind it. The irony is, once you stop asking for permission, you become more impactful. Not because you're trying to impress, but because you're finally resonating with truth. And truth cuts through noise. Truth is magnetic. People can sense it. They may not always like it, but they feel it. And in a world starving for authenticity, your courage becomes a light. Not a spotlight, but a torch one that gives others the strength to unmask themselves too. But here's the final revelation: you were never truly trapped by others' opinions. You were trapped by your belief that they mattered more than your own. The cage was never locked. It was built from illusions of rejection, of failure, of not being enough. And now that you see it, you can step out. You can choose to live a life that no longer asks, "Do they approve?" but instead asks, "Is this true to me?" So I leave you with this: what kind of life would you build if you no longer waited for the world to give you permission to begin? And if you already know the answer, what's stopping you? Because the final freedom is this: when you no longer care who's watching, you finally start living.